Hello, everybody. My name is Nilanjana, and I'm an assistant professor in the English department of Hansraj College in University of Delhi. I am excited as well as more than slightly nervous about sharing my presentation with you all. My presentation is titled One Plastic Bag at a Time, Embodying the Diseases, OCD and Untouchability in Shumona Roy's short story titled Untouchability. In this presentation, I have tried to depict how plastic pollution, along with its associated ills, affect people in highly stratified societies and how mental health disorders like OCD become an excuse for the further othering of people who suffer from it and investing marginalized groups with the tag of contaminant or pollutant, thereby rendering them as untouchables. The short story has been used to depict how literary responses and representation of OCD accommodate the changing nature of the contaminant, especially in cultures where some form of untouchability is practiced. Now, before we delve into the literary analysis of the chosen short story and how untouchability and OCD are depicted, here is a short slide on how caste works as a means to practice untouchability in South Asian countries. Caste is a form of inequality based on descent and enforced through the control of labor, land rights, access to water, healthcare, and denial of other socioeconomic privileges to people considered to be belonging to such low castes. Terms like scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes are the terms adopted for these disadvantaged castes. In India and its South Asian neighbors like Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, caste based untouchability is practiced through the denial of constitutional and human rights to groups thought of as low and polluting. Instances of such exclusion involve separate housing, honor killing of individuals involved in intercaste marriages, using casteist slurs, physical segregation in classrooms and workplaces, and other forms of systemic abuse. It's important to note and remember that untouchability extended to a particular social group goes on for generations because it is ultimately based on descent. Now we start with the literary analysis. The short story depicts the trajectory of a retired school teacher, Mrs. Chakrabarti, who moves back into the childhood home after her sister Mo passed away from cancer. She began cleaning the house, a corner every morning. Everywhere there were piles of plastic bags, folded and arranged beneath mattresses, inside cupboards and wardrobes, plastic bags inside larger plastic bags. For the next few months, Mrs. Chakrabarti embarked on an exhausting but oddly energizing journey of getting rid of every bit of plastic from the house. Here I have posted the screen grabs from the magazine where this particular work was published. One day, quite by chance, she discovered a book behind the bed and it was titled Cancer. And evidently, it was brought by Mrs. Chakravarti's sister Mo to learn more about her illness. And Mrs. Chakravarti read the book all night. When the milkman rang the doorbell in the morning, she had just fallen asleep. Shocked by the sound, she woke up slightly disoriented. The sight of milk in the transparent plastic bag made her furious. She lost control of herself. No more milk from tomorrow, she shouts at the milkman. The truth was that Mrs. Chakravarti had had a dream that Mo's cancer had been caused by her obsession with plastic. Though she didn't fear dying, she had decided that she didn't want to die of cancer. She was scared and even slightly embarrassed of sharing this thesis of hers with anybody else, and this soon became a conviction for her. She had grown up in a world where illness came mostly through contagion, and conditioned to attributing both physical and mental disorders to touch, she decided to change her ways of living dramatically. Food poisoning, common colds, skin diseases, physical ailments, and all these, even the case of bad company, the proverbial rotten apple spoiling the rest, all these were the result of touch. And the most deadliest of disease, whose name she was scared of uttering even silently in her mind, AIDS. It was only a matter of time before scientists confirmed what she now knew intuitively. It was the intrusive touch of plastic that caused cancer. Was there cancer before the invention of plastic? She would find out gradually. But she wouldn't wait for knowledge, scientific and historical knowledge, to kill her before that. And so began a single minded devotion to the eradication of plastic from her life. She kept on isolating herself from everybody until an old colleague from her school, Nupur, dropped by to check on her. And just as the eye looks for the moon in a naked sky without being aware that it is that it's seeking, Mrs. Chakravarti's eyes sought and found plastic. As Nupur spoke, Mrs. Chakravarti's eyes registered with concern the plastic strap of her watch. And she remarks, the world's become plastic, space has become plastic, time has become plastic, she said, pointing to the watch with her eyes. Bereft of company, Mrs. Chakravarti grew thinner and lonelier, though she was en route to anyone. Friends and acquaintances stopped visiting her. It is easier to visit and commiserate with the physically ailing than one in mental agony. They began to think of her as a person who was being purposely difficult. They had nicknames for her, and all these nicknames were of female politicians: Mamata, Mayavati, Indira Gandhi. A distant relative she used to call Tapan Jethu, Jethu being the Bengali word for uncle. He used to call her scheduled caste. No one really understood what it signified until the 93-year-old man explained it himself. Just as the lower or scheduled caste people were considered untouchables, Mrs. Chakravarti had turned plastic into an untouchable, into a scheduled caste. It was assumed that Mrs. Chakravarti went to the hospital and to the doctor on her own. And though nobody was actually present there, they knew of the last conversation she had. It was with the doctor. Why are you doing this to yourself, Maya? He had asked. He knew that she had stopped eating almost completely. There was nothing, almost nothing, that didn't come inside a plastic container or packet. Rice and lentils, oil and spices, vegetables and meat. In fact, she had told him about a rumor that China was now producing plastic rice and eggs in its factories. Because I'm Maya, she had said feebly. No one could say what he had said in response, but they knew her last words. Everything is made of plastic now. Everything except Maya. How can Maya be made of plastic? In the cause of death column, the doctor wrote, plastic. When his assistant looked at him, he added a line: unnatural death caused by trying to avoid natural death. Dissatisfied with the formulation of that reason, he struck it out twice with black ink and wrote again, plastic. We now come towards the conclusion of literary analysis, and we gradually see that Mrs. Chakravarti's aversion towards cancer manifests into a fear of plastic. The material found aplenty in her sister Mo's home. While Mo hoarded plastic of all kinds, Maya Chakravarti expelled it. Her vigorous cleansing of plastic is an act of expulsion of her feeble attempts at removing death, of trying to eradicate any potential cancer. It is in this process she becomes like the contaminant that she is trying to avoid. Plastic is not just a metaphor of a disease, it is a signifier of capitalism's enmeshment in our daily lives, of this soulless ahistorical material taking over the fabric in our worlds and causing changes that not everybody can survive. An old uncle says that she has made plastic like the scheduled castes of her country, and using words like scheduled castes in dehumanizing contexts is very common. Such slurs are routinely used by privileged upper castes to dehumanize and trivialize caste-based inequalities and its ensuing trauma. And with the doctor stamping plastic as the cause of death, she literally embodies the pollutant and disease that she was trying to escape from. In the next two slides, there are two images. The first image depicts an advertisement by a well-known brand that sells kitchen appliances. And this ad came out sometime in 2020 or early 21, and sometime during the first wave of the pandemic in India. And it said, "Are you allowing your maid to knead atta dough by hand?" Domestic workers, laborers, and all such people coming from who form the labor economy of India and in South Asian countries. They are from oppressed castes and classes. During the pandemic, by releasing this particular advertisement, the brand not only labeled all such workers as outsiders, as pollutants, and as carriers of disease, but it also reinforced the class dynamics, and it also gave legitimacy to the idea that such people, that people who are not of a certain strata in the society, are pollutants and contaminants. It only reinforced the caste and class system that exists. The second image is of migrant laborers being sprayed with sanitizers and in many cases with insecticides and pesticides as well. These migrant laborers were returning from their workplaces back to their hometowns and cities and urban, semi-urban and rural villages. And in many places, this image, many such images emerged where disinfectants of some kind were sprayed onto them. And as I have said before, most of the labor-based economy that runs in these countries, it is caste-based. So we see that there is this manifestation, this image of a pollutant changing from a very small, unseen, and invisible virus to something that is more tangible, that is the oppressed class. They are being branded by the upper castes and classes. And in conclusion, it can be said that in countries like India, the pandemic has given legitimacy to acts that enforce untouchability. Thus, we see that the contaminant of an OCD is not just an object or feeling anymore. It is projected on to entire communities of people historically deemed as untouchables. Cleaning and washing have lost its benign character and have become a tool for practicing prejudice and carried out by a populace suffering from a mass hysteria of OCD. The disease and its diagnosis are trivialized and appropriated to serve various interests. Thank you for coming to this conference and listening to me.